Hi, I'm Les Bridgman, and I'm going through the Bible chapter by chapter. I'm currently in the book of Genesis, chapter 11. This chapter gives us the famous story of the Tower of Babel. This is one of the most famous stories in the Bible. It begins with this sentence: "Now the whole world had one language and a common speech." So it's taking us way back into early human history when only one language existed. And if you think about it, it does make sense, because if we start with Adam and Eve, they must have spoken the same language to each other, or they wouldn't have had a relationship. And then they must have passed on that language to their children. So how can it be that we have hundreds and even thousands of different languages? How did that happen if we're passing on this language process to little children, right? They're learning the language of their parents. How then do we have all of these different languages? And this chapter gives us a story about how that happened. Now, I would summarize this chapter with this phrase here: divine judgment on human pride resulting in a land of confusion. The expanded summary is this: back when there was one common language, people traveled east to the land of Babylonia. It says in the Bible, it uses the word Shinar, but that is Babylonia, which is in modern-day Iraq, near the Persian Gulf region, just north of that area. People traveled over there, and those people said two things to each other. They said, "Come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly, and come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens." Now, how do these two things connect? Baking bricks and building a city with a tower. Well, archaeologists have discovered that in this region, people used baked bricks to build their structures. This is kind of unique because in the Palestine region, people use stones to build. But way over in the Mesopotamian area, they're using bricks. They're putting these bricks together, baking them in the sun, or baking them in an oven, and then building their structures. So the author of Genesis knew something about ancient building techniques far from the land of Israel. Now, why do they want to build this city with an impressive tower? They say, so that we may make a name for ourselves, otherwise we will be scattered over the face of the whole earth. So they want to show how powerful they are. They want to show an impressive feat of strength and ingenuity by building this tower so that people will not mess with them, so that people will realize, hey, leave them alone. Look what they can accomplish. Aren't they amazing? And so they're trying to stop this scattering process. They understand, it's kind of like they intuitively understand they should be dispersed, they should inhabit the whole earth, but they're trying to thwart that scattering process and stay in one place. The story proceeds by saying, "But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower the people were building." It's as if God is the building inspector in this story, and he wants to get an up-close personal look at what they're doing. Hey, let me check this out. Let me see what they're up to. And after seeing the tower, the Lord said, "If as one people speaking the same language they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them." So then God says, "Come, let us go down and confuse their language so they will not understand each other." Now imagine you're on a building project, everybody's excited. The next day you go to work and you can't understand each other. There's just confusion. You cannot communicate. So this leads to the people stopping their building project. The place is called Babel because from there the Lord confused the language of all the earth. And then from Babel, the people were scattered over all the earth. Now, let me begin with a minor point, and then we'll get into two main points about this story. One minor point is there it says, God says, "Come, let us go down and confuse their language." So why does God use this third person plural pronoun, "come, let us go down"? We saw this in Genesis 1, where God says, "Let us make man in our own image and in our own likeness." If there's one God, why is he using a plural pronoun for himself? Well, there are some different theories, and I don't have the final answer for you on this one, but I'll give you three different ideas. Some say God is speaking to his angelic host, so he's speaking to angels who help him on his mission, who accomplish certain things for God. Number two, other people say this is a majestic plural, as when a king talks to himself with this plural pronoun, it's showing his majesty by talking to himself in this way. And then a third option is that this is a reference to the Trinity, God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. Again, I don't have the final answer, but those are three different theories, and I don't think that's a main point of the story. Now, the main points, number one, I think is people gravitate away from God's will and toward their own will. The people in this story, which appears to be all people, were living contrary to God's command in Genesis 1 and Genesis 9. God said in both places to Adam and then to Noah's sons, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth." But these people don't want to fill the earth. They want to stay in one place and show their impressive strength and ingenuity and wisdom. And instead of walking with God on earth like Enoch and Noah did, they want to build a tower that reaches up into the heavens, reaches to the sky. They want to kind of enter heaven with their own strength. And so they're expressing their pride, and they're not humble in what they're doing. As Enoch and Noah did, walking humbly with God on earth, they want to say, let's climb up into heaven. Let's build this tower, then we can get up there. That's the way up to heaven. Several scholars think the tower they're building was probably a ziggurat. They've discovered these ziggurats in the region, and they were huge structures with steps on the side leading to a sanctuary at the top. And the idea was that the gods would descend to the sanctuary and then would walk down the steps down to earth, where they would be worshiped and receive gifts from the people. And so in this way, these ziggurats were like a gateway between heaven and earth. And so these scholars think that this tower they were building, because they've discovered so many of these structures in that region, probably was something like a ziggurat. And they built ziggurats with baked bricks, and they also used tar for mortar to keep these bricks together. Whereas in Palestine, like we said, they used stones and they used mortar. So again, the author had accurate information about building techniques in Mesopotamia. The second main point of the story is, in the clash of wills between God and humans, God wins. The Lord came down is the center of the story. The story is written using a literary device known as a chiasm. It's a pattern of inverse repetition. And so what you look for with a chiasm is, what is the center of the story? All right, so we have basically A and then A prime, B and B prime, and we go down and we're looking for the center, and the center is, but the Lord came down. There is no parallel repetition to that line right there, but for many of the other lines there is. So that's the center of the story. That's what the author is highlighting. The whole story takes a turning point there, right? Takes a turn because they were on a mission. Everything was going great. They're building their city, but the Lord came down to check it out. Then everything changes with that inspection, that divine building inspection. And in this clash of wills, right, they didn't want to be scattered, but by the end of the story, the people are scattered. So God wins. So the people can fight, they can try to stop the process, but really there's no match, right? It's no match between God and human strength. It's like the wind is just going to blow you away. You can try to stop it. You can try to stand your ground, but you really have no chance. It's going to blow you away. God's power is just way beyond ours, and he will be victorious in the end. Now, at the end of Genesis 11, we have another genealogy for Shem. This is the second genealogy for Shem, because at the end of chapter 10, right, it was a genealogy for Shem. But this one takes a different direction with some different descendants. It goes from Shem down to Terah and his three sons. And those sons are Abram, Nahor, and Haran. So if we look back now over this whole structure of Genesis, from Genesis 5 down to the end of chapter 11, we have a genealogy, Adam to Noah in Genesis 5. We have a story, or two stories, of Noah and his sons, chapters 6 through 9. We have another genealogy, Japheth, Ham, and Shem's descendants, chapter 10. Then we have another story, the Tower of Babel, chapter 11, and then a genealogy, Shem to Terah and his sons. So genealogy, story, genealogy, story, genealogy. And so you know what we're going to get next. We're going to get a story, probably from one of Terah's descendants. Now we do get a mini story about Terah and his family at the end of chapter 11. It says, Haran became the father of Lot. Haran died in Ur of the Chaldeans in the land of his birth. So Haran is born in Ur, and that's again way over in that Babylonian region, and then he dies there. So that's one of Terah's sons is now out of the picture. And then it names the wives of Abram and Nahor, which are Sarai and Milcah, respectively. So Abram is married to Sarai, and Nahor is married to Milcah. This is the first time a wife's name is given other than the name Eve in Genesis 3. So this is unique by naming these women. It also mentions that Sarai was unable to conceive, so it would appear that the genealogy would need to go through Nahor, right? Because Sarah cannot give birth. So it seems like, again, remember, genealogies are a key to the book of Genesis. So who's the story going to be carried through? It seems like, well, Haran is out of the picture, and Abram's wife Sarai cannot give birth. So it must be Nahor. That's who you would assume would be carrying the genealogy. The chapter ends with Terah taking Abram, Lot, and Sarai, then leaving Ur to go to Canaan. We are not told why Terah left Ur, but we know he didn't make it to Canaan because he settled in Haran, which is north of Canaan, and then he died at 205 years old. So he set out to go to Canaan, but he stopped in Haran and stayed there. Now, what are the main points of this little mini genealogy and story at the very end of chapter 11? Number one, Shem plays an important role in God's plan. This is the second genealogy of Shem, which means Shem is a key figure in the story. Both genealogies trace Shem's descendants to Eber, but then they go in a different direction. In Genesis 10, the genealogy goes from Eber to his son Joktan, then Joktan's descendants. In Genesis 11, the genealogy goes from Eber to his son Peleg, then Peleg's descendants, ending with Terah and his three sons, Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Number two, God works his plan through the generations. The author has set up the story to highlight the main human character who is about to come on the scene, Abram, a descendant of Shem, who is now on the doorstep of Canaan. He's just north in this city called Haran. And remember what Noah said, praise be to the Lord, the God of Shem, may Canaan be the slave of Shem. So this descendant of Shem is right there on the doorstep of the land of Canaan. And that's where we end chapter 11. And I think number three, this shows the third main point, God works his plan through human migration. Terah began the process of migration, and this process moved Abram closer to Canaan, and this is going to become a major theme in the Bible, God giving the land of Canaan to the descendants of Abram, whose name was changed to Abraham. So this is Genesis chapter 11. Thank you for watching.